we're now recording. Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the Top Gun Sales and Marketing Show on the BVTV network. I've been in sales and sales training for well over 40 years and journeyed, even endured, the sales learning and development time. One sales director of a well-known toy company where I was once top salesman of the week amongst 40 colleagues wrote in his weekly newsletter to everybody, Gallagher, not Malcolm, by the way, Gallagher is number one this week. Let's hope he keeps it up rather than his usual pathetic efforts. I still have that dog-eared piece of paper 40 odd years later. That was his form of motivation. He would also regularly call salesmen's wives and ask them if they knew how poorly their husband was doing this month against his bonus. What humanity. So it was music to my ears to have the opportunity of meeting my guest today, who aims to put the humanity back into sales. Let's go meet from Nazca Services, the CEO and founder, Treve Wearne. Treve, morning.
Good morning, Malcolm. Thrilled to be here with you.
I suppose we shouldn't say morning because somebody might be watching this in the evening, but somewhere around the world when they're watching this, Treve, and I hope they will do and pass it on to colleagues, it will be morning, and that's the time to get inspired. So let's get on with it. Treve, give us a brief overview of your thinking about sales and humanity and what Nazca Services is about.
Absolutely, love to. Your story, Malcolm, is actually locking into a very important part of humanity. We call it the peak end rule. We remember those intense moments and the endings. And there is a perfect example of why humanity is so important. So to answer your question, I'd just like to split it up into a couple of parts. First of all, what is selling? Well, for me, selling is any activity that works to keep the existing customers or secure new customers. That means everybody is in sales, even if you haven't got the title sales in your title. So what that means is that we've got to think about where does the salesperson sit within all of this. Now, important aspect about that is also we need to look at the impact of the pandemic, and that's been seismic. So the gap between buyers and sellers is growing, and there's a disconnect, and what the sellers are actually offering and what the buyers actually want is shifting as well, and that's being accelerated by the virtual world. And to put that into context, some of you may have heard of Jonathan Lister. He's LinkedIn's solution or sales solutions. He heads up that area of the business, and he's calling it buyers first, and I completely agree with that. My question is, how do you support sales transform itself? Of course, you put the buyers first, but how? How do you do that? And that's where humanity comes into it. It needs to be in the sales DNA. Oh, to put humanity into context, I'd like to actually take our audience back 2,300 years ago to Plato. Now, Socrates and Plato. Socrates was the teacher, Plato was the student. Now, what Plato said was that human behavior flows from three sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. So let's look at it from a sales leader's perspective. Well, a leader, you need to be focused on those three elements. So where's the desire? That's your quota plans. Are they set up correctly? The sales process is your emotional engagement. That's inward facing. There's something wrong there. Your sales and your knowledge, that's your sales enablement. Are you doing that right? Most are not. Then look at it from the point of view of the salespeople. The buyer, what are you doing with the buyer? How are you actually engaging with the buyer from a point of view of their desire? There's not a lot of good stuff happening there, unfortunately. With the good sales guys, there are, but there's a lot of very poor discipline. It's about discovery. Then there's the engagement. Again, you've got to step into their shoes. That's the buyer's journey. And then we have to recognize what's occurring in the world. Buyers are in control here. I'm sorry to mention it to some of the sales guys, but you're not in control. The buyer is in control. So you've got to actually help them make sense of everything that's occurring. So out of all of that, what we need to consider, and this is where Nazca comes in, is look at it from a point of view of the sales process. My question to our audience is, where is the sales process focused? It's inward facing. Right. That is all wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. So what that means is your acid test. Any one of our audience, especially if you're a sales leader, ask yourself these two questions: slipping or lost deals. If you have a lot, Oh, you have a number, you have a problem there. It's related to your sales process. Sales attrition, losing good people, it's down to your sales process. It's down to how your pipeline is set up. And that is everywhere. That's where Nazca focuses, making sure that we shift the focus from the inward facing sales process to the outward facing buyer's journey.
Brilliant, yes. And I'm totally with you on that concept regarding buyers. I've interviewed buyers for over 20 years now for our supplier and procurement training process. And I always remember one, Diane, it says, salesmen come in, and I'm thinking, do you want to win an order or do you want to win our business? And he says the ones that win are the ones that taken the time to understand us, to know our business. Now, what you're doing is a much needed initiative. How did you arrive at this thinking? You know, my motivation from my past experience. What's your motivation?
Such a good question. It comes back to desire again and all that stuff we were talking about Plato, doesn't it? My motivation was this absolute distraught feeling when I was because I've been consulting and working at senior levels with business around the world for many, many years. And I would go into quarterly business reviews, and they were no more than glorified deal reviews. And they were flying people in from all over the world. And I was just seeing this as a complete lost opportunity. The other aspect that just has driven me to do what I'm doing and build Nazca with our team is because there would be this emotional engagement going on, which was confrontational. You're my boss, you're looking at me and saying, Treve, when are you going to close this deal? All you want to know is closure, closure, closure. And there's this complete obsession with the sales pipe and the shareholder equity. It's not about the shareholder equity, it's about stakeholder equity. That's what's really important. And what it was doing was it was just burning out salespeople. It was burning out sales leaders. So if we look at some of the research that's coming out, what we're actually seeing here is that a typical CSO is in post for no more than 18 months. So 6 months to get into role, 6 months to do their job, 6 months to plan their exit. Is that really what you want as a business? No, of course it's not. So this human tragedy, and I know it sounds a little bit of a dramatic word, but it is a human tragedy. This human tragedy that's occurring is very sad. And that's what's driven me to do what I'm doing.
I'm with you. And by the way, that 18 months is exactly the same for people in marketing jobs. The problem is when you start to talk to them, you don't know which part of the 18 months you're at.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Many sales thinkers are saying that the traditional sales funnel is outdated, as with technology, prospects can enter the tunnel at differing levels. Rather than the traditional pour in at the top and pull out at the bottom approach. What's your thinking on this?
I completely agree. It's totally outdated. It's 20th century stuff. And we're in the 21st century. We've got to change our whole thinking on this. And we've got to think about it from a point of view, not as a funnel. It's not a funnel. It's a journey. It is the buyer's journey. And this goes to my point earlier. The funnel is inward facing, and you're tracking this object called a sales opportunity through a funnel to achieve something that you're hoping it's going to be achieved, which is an outcome as a closure. That just doesn't work. It's the journey that counts. And what we need to be taking on and considering is what's happening in the buyer's world. There's a shift to power. They hold all the power. They can go onto Google and they can find whatever they want, and they're contacting us much later in the sales funnel. So we've got to be thinking about it completely differently. We've also got to be thinking about it from a point of view of generational shift. We've got a lot more millennials in our workforce now as buyers, for example, and they're digital natives. So with all the AI and the automation, etc., they're much more happier not talking to a salesperson, but actually talking to a computer, so to speak, and doing it themselves. So what that actually means is that we've got to be talking to the buyers a long time before they ever contact us.
Yes.
And that's where marketing and sales, they need to completely reconsider and change their whole approach on how they're doing this stuff. It needs a complete reinventing.
I am absolutely in agreement. And that's coming back from the buyers at all levels that we're dealing with. And I presented to 24 buyers the other day, and they collectively spend 1.5 billion a year. So, and they were just saying exactly the same. Get to know us, help us solve problems. Don't come in just to sell us what you want to sell us. Look, in our Top Gun Sales Club, we're saying that buyers have changed, and they've changed very fast, I believe, in this last 7 months as well. And it's now not what you do, but who you are as a person in a business that counts. And I used to think that sort of came at the end when you would tick the compliance forms. Now I think it comes a lot earlier. Where do you think this type of communication should come in the funnel, and how can it be achieved?
Yeah, great question. For me, it's all about purpose and being purposeful. That's what it's all about. And it comes in everywhere. It's a relationship. It's not a transaction in the case of it steps in, a couple of steps and it's out. It doesn't work like that. As you're going to your point about the buyers and what they're looking for. They're looking for relationships, but they're looking for the right relationships. So therefore, we need to focus on what is our purpose, and we need to make sure our people are purposeful. But what that means is that we need to be clear on our purpose. So let me just share with you what Nazca's purpose are, because obviously we heard the term eat our own dog food. We like to think about it as drink our own champagne. And so our purpose with what we do is to create previously unknown clarity, simplicity, cohesion, completeness in even the most complex sales organizations and buyer engagements. And what that means is that we've got to focus on our high ground, like they used to build castles on their high ground. We've got to go there and we've got to disqualify everything out that's not in that area. And that requires disqualification and getting it out of the sales pipe as quickly as possible. We need to also be absolutely clear on our proposition. So for example, at Nazca, what's our proposition? It is to reimagine and redefine the sales engagement. So when I'm talking to clients and CSOs, that's exactly what I say, because for the very reasons we're talking about. We talked about marketing, sales and marketing. Think of it as marketing. We need to focus on our audience before they ever contact us. And then we need to think about being authentic. We need to think about how we actually focus on taking all those that are not going to be playing to our advantage. It may sound harsh, but that's the way we need to do it. We need to focus on those that value us and can pay us. Have those in your sales pipeline. Get all of the others out. Then we need to focus on the buyer behavior, adapt and support their emotional engagement. Then we need to focus on the insights, discover and become a sense maker. Then we need to actually focus on the buyer's journey. Now, the buyer's journey is really important. This is kind of the culmination. So I just like to finish on answering your question here, Malcolm, is everyone talks about the buyer's journey, but what does it really mean? Well, you're a buyer, you're going to be considering 6 jobs you need to do. And these are the 6 jobs that need to get into the sales DNA, because if you don't put them there, you're going to miss the mark. So what are they? Well, first of all is problem identification. We need to do something. So help them, show them you're right to operate there. Otherwise, get out. Second is solution exploration. They're going to be asking, what is out there to solve our problem? Make sure you're positioning at your position of strength. Third question they're going to ask is requirements building. What exactly do we need the purchase to do? Help them with that. Make it easy for them. The fourth job they're going to do is supplier selection. Does this do what we need it to do? Make sure that they are confident that you can do it. Remove that risk for them. The fifth is validation. We think we know the right answer, but we need to be sure. Build that, reduce the risk. And finally, consensus. We need to get everyone on board. Sales guys, do your job. Get out there, talk to not just the people you're comfortable with talking to, like technical people with technical buyers, talk to everybody. And then when you come to this last job of consensus, you're helping the buyers by bringing these people together and saying, well, John is really keen on this. And Sally over there is really keen for this reason. You become indispensable. Isn't that what selling is really about?
Yes,
so that's
truly.
how I approach it.
Truly. And I love that bit that you're talking about, finding the high ground, because that's where they used to build the castles. And as you know, I'm in Northumberland. We're surrounded by them. So next time we talk, I'm going to have a picture of Bamborough Castle behind me, which I know that you like and you've seen before. And on the sands below it is where Lancelot wooed Guinevere. So that's the way to sell, isn't it? Get the relationship going. Now, like you, yeah. Look, putting aside humanity considerations, today's salespeople are still under pressure to perform and reach targets, especially as companies try to bounce back from the pandemic impact. What do you say to leaders of those salespeople, and how can they use Nazca Services to relieve the pressure?
You're absolutely right. Some CSOs I've spoken to have said, look, Treve, this humanity stuff is mamby-pamby. Just give me the tools to do it. And the reason they say that is because they're under so much pressure. It's not that they don't believe, it's because they're under so much pressure, which goes to your point. Yes, what humanity is important, but how do you actually put it into action? My advice, again, using the Nazca platform, is offer a rapid audit. You can do this with the platform. Offer them a rapid audit as a free service. I know that goes against the grain for sales, but it's really important, because if you're doing this, what you're doing is you're delivering to the customer more financial certainty during a crisis. And that's what they're looking for. The wonderful thing about an audit, especially if you're doing a rapid audit with the Nazca platform, is it's what you need to be doing anyway. So I don't see what the problem is. So what you're actually doing is you're turning the tables and you're saying, Mr. Customer, I've got this rapid audit service and I'd like to offer it to you for free. And what we're going to do is reduce your financial uncertainty here, and we're going to create more, we're going to de-risk it, and we're going to create more certainty. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to offer it free to you. Are you interested? Of course we're interested.
Yes.
Of course we're interested. So we have all the tools. I'm not going to go through all the tools other than just mention one of the tools. When we say sales forecasting, what do we really mean? Forecasting is something's going to happen in time, some point in time. So we have developed a timeline technique that allows us to see where we are in time in their world on their buyer's journey.
Wow, I like that.
Because then we're back, Plato again, we're back to emotional engagement. If you know where you are on their buyer's journey, you will know how they're going to behave. If someone kind of just connects with you, it's like, wow, he or she just kind of knows me.
I like that. And that must be extremely good for capital sales, where, it's a long pull through on the actual sales process, isn't it? Knowing where they are. Excellent. Now, like you, I believe that the salesperson is at the center of an organization. After all, nothing happens until something is sold, is the saying. That's the culture in the USA. But here in the UK, I don't think we've got that culture. It's count the beans first, be accounting led. Let's get rid of sales and marketing and cut costs as soon as we have any difficulties. Surely that in these times is silly. Sales are everything, aren't they? How can what you're doing help change perceptions about the value of sales and selling?
Yeah, you're right. There is a massive divide in approach here in the UK compared to America. And I remember years ago when I went and set my first company up over in the States, over in Austin, and I noticed it, and the deals were so much bigger, and there was so much, but buyers were willing to take more risk and engage, but the sellers were willing to approach it differently. And there wasn't this short-termism that we face. So I do agree, but what I would say is urge a point of caution here. Yes, there is that divide, but there's another layer on top of it. Now that layer which is on top of it is that there is a lot of organizations, and I can think of a number of global big Silicon Valley organizations that become short-term. They're not actually doing what they say. I know one in particular who's selling something and they don't even use it. I mean, how ridiculous is that? So what it's doing is that the pressure that's occurring because of this gap between sellers and buyers, when that gap is increasing, the pressure is increasing. What that's doing is it's driving us to go short term. And what we need to do is we need to recognize, yes, selling is the core, but a lot of people, because of millennial shifts, etc., are going online, and they're going to actually purchase things online. So what that means is the gap in the buyer's journey for a salesperson to get involved is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. What we need to do is we need to now change the context so it gets bigger.
Right.
And how does one do that? You go from a pond where you're the small fish, you want to go into a pond where you're the big fish, so it's a smaller pond. The way you actually do that is you focus on the more complex buyer decisions that need the engagement, need the mental skill, need the skill of the salesperson. And you let automation and online procurement systems or web portals and AI, let that deal with the repeatable and the predictable, because it's taking it all away. And that's where the behavioral skill is so incredibly important. Salespeople need to focus there. So sales is both the bot, that's sales, but sales is also the person. And it's a question of where do we adapt and where do we focus? And we have to focus on the more complex sales engagements that the buyers are screaming out for help.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And the adaptability is so important. And we need to actually teach the sales ladies first, because they seem to think that unless people are out selling, they're not doing it. But, building relationships, communicating, learning about the customer. Now, I understand the power and usage of technology in the sales process. And I only wish I had its power when I started all those years ago. But I feel that too many companies think that technology can replace actual sales people. Now, this thinking is probably from people who've never been in the field, never had the stomach churn of trying to win a new client, never had to make a presentation to a board, never had to make that first cold knock on the door. Surely technology cannot replace that human element. After all, a buyer buys the person first, the company second, and then the offering third. Can technology truly replace salespeople, as many think, or is now the time for Nazca Services to bridge the human gap?
Yeah, very, very insightful. To answer this question, we need to, you mentioned the salesperson and sales. The two are different. The salesperson is a human. And therefore, what value does that human interaction provide? That's where Nazca is focused. We mentioned the timeline technique. We talked about Plato, all these other aspects. We focus on making the salesperson more relevant. Now, can AI and automation and machine learning, et cetera, automate all of that? Well, it can actually automate sales jobs. Let's take one, for example, the city with traders. 20 years ago, there were loads of traders on the trade floor. Now it's all bots and computer and ML and et cetera, et cetera. So it does happen, but we need to recognize where it happens. It's not blue and white collar worker differentiation. It is all to do with repeatable and predictable. So if you're doing anything that's repeatable and predictable, expect it to be automated. And if you're a salesperson who's just doing account management and it could be automated by a system, I'm afraid it is going to go. That's just the reality. Yeah. But a human salesperson, can AI and ML and stuff automate that? No. Goes to your point. No, it can't. But what we have to do as salespeople is we have to be salespeople. And a salesperson is a relationship building. It's earning trust. It's delivering value. And where salespeople are not doing that, then they will be less relevant and they will be automated. But where they are building relationships, they're earning trust, they're delivering value, then no, technology cannot, in my opinion, not for a long, long time, certainly in our lifetime, I don't see that happening.
Whew, thank goodness for that. I can live a little bit longer. Look, selling and the sales process and sales culture has changed in just 9 months. Many hope it will go back to supposed normal. I say it's altered forever, and that virtual selling, especially with the new normal, along with virtual presentations, better usage of data, video, and in-vision ability. Do you agree? And how do you see Nazca Services playing its part in this new altered way of selling?
It's completely altered. It will never go back to what it is. in the old days, we look back, in the old days, it was a case of you and I had a beer together, we had a relationship, and because we had that relationship and a couple of beers, you would give me the order. Now it doesn't work like that. One, we don't have that relationship, and two, because it's all gone virtual, I have to prepare a lot more now before I go online and I'm engaging with you. I can't kind of wing it and rely on those relationships. So what going virtual has done is it's forced us to focus on our skill in preparation and managing the sales engagement all the way through to stay relevant. The way that Nazca helps with all of that, we talked about the timeline report and the timeline technique. That's really important because it's about where you are in time. We talked about the contact insights, making sure we stepped into and understood and asked the right questions. We guide the questions on where to focus. The buyer's journey, we guide those. We guide those questions. We guide the building of the proposal. The conversation bricks. It's like having a little document management system on steroids. You're collecting all these little bits of information and pulling them together related to that aspect of the sales engagement. And then this is the really important part that we need to recognize as far as how it's all changing. It's never been about us. It's always been about the customer. It's always been about the buyer. And therefore, if we look at our sales pipeline, and this is where it was really kind of accepted because there was a lot more money sloshing around, it kind of said, well, it's moving through the sales pipeline. We've got attrition. We cannot afford that attrition anymore. We've got to actually be laser focused. So what we're doing is we're taking these scores that are provided by the salesperson as their opinion when they're out in the field, and we're passing those back into the CRM system. It could be Salesforce or Sugar or Microsoft, whoever it is, and we're challenging the sales pipeline. So when you're in a virtual deal review and you're my boss, where there's risk, not sequentially, but where it is along the whole engagement, the whole relationship, because we're challenging the relationship, we're not building on it. And that is how I believe that the whole way of selling is going to change, is changing, and it's, it's becoming a lot more disciplined.
And I keep saying to sales leaders and sales managers as well, get on board now, or else, you're going to be obsolete. Before we move on to my penultimate question, Treve, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your URL, which is on the screen behind me, and it's Nazca Services. That's NAZCA for listeners, NAZCA-services.com, NazcaServices.com. In the UK, we're facing a continuing challenge at the moment of pandemic, Brexit, and a disastrous economy, a triple headache for business leaders. Selling's going to be tougher with many indecisive buyers. I mean, indecision is a big, big problem from politicians all the way downwards, and businesses less willing to take risks or be more innovative with buying new products, because that's a risk as well, isn't it? How do you see Nazca Services helping sales teams get through this triple whammy?
Mm-hmm. We talked about, it's a really good question, because we talked about the rapid audit earlier. But if I was to have, and I'll give you an overarching thing that we are encouraging our clients and those that we work with to do, and it's fail fast. Now that might come across to some as, well, wait a minute, I don't want to fail at all. No, you've got to embrace failure. Yeah. It's really, really important, because failure is part of innovation. And the problem that the mindset, and this is partly going back to the UK versus America thing, part of the attitude is that, oh no, failure is really bad, and if I fail, I'm going to lose my job. Guys, you've got to change the culture within your organizations. You have to do that. You look at some of the most successful organizations in the world, and what have they done? They've embraced failure. But you've got to fail fast. And what Nazca does is it allows you to fail fast. It sounds like a bit counterintuitive, but let me just put it in context. You've got your sales pipeline. We talked about have your sales pipeline filled with opportunities that value you and have the money to pay you. Most sales pipelines are full of opportunities that value you and don't have the money to pay you. So what we've got to do is we've got to get those out. So what we have is the approach that be creative, be innovative, embrace all of those aspects in your culture. But you've got to make sure that the window in which you identify, is it going to fly or not going to fly, has to be really short. And that's why you embrace failure. Encourage failure, encourage creativity, all of that stuff, but make sure when it occurs, you stop it there, you celebrate it, but you only celebrate it when you learn from it. And if you do not learn from failure, then it is a failure, and that should never be celebrated. And what Nazca is doing is it's driving that. And what it means is that your team's culture, your whole approach, the way you focus is actually, you're raising the bar. And that creativity is what buyers are looking for.
Yeah, I love that one, because I knew a sales director who used to challenge his teams on how many no's they got, because he knew that the more no's they got, that would lead to a yes. And at least with a no, you've got a response, haven't you? It may be, no, not at this moment. No, because I want it in blue, or whatever it may be. It's pulling those out. Treve, I like to give all my guests 3 wishes, and yours are for the understanding by leaders of the value of real salespeople in a business. What are your 3 wishes?
I'd like to go back to Plato, 2,300 years ago. And I'm just going to take my 3 wishes, Malcolm, and I'm going to link them to the 3 behavioral, the desire, the emotional, and the knowledge. So on the desire, to sales leaders, embrace brave, courageous salespeople, and look at your incentive plans and your quota plans, and drive innovation and embrace that innovation, but allow them to fail quickly. Don't allow things to fester in a sales pipeline. So that, if you're going to, you've got to focus on the desire. You've got to actually drive the right desire within your salespeople. And there's tons of really phenomenal salespeople out there which are just thirsting and dying to have a company which will embrace that. So embrace that whole approach on driving the desire with the incentive and quota plans and how you go about it, because quite frankly, they're broken and they need to be fixed. The second, we look at emotion. Embrace salespeople who demonstrate the power of reciprocity. I always have trouble saying that, but yes. Reciprocity means you serve first, you sell later. It works. It's how our mind, it's how our brain is built. And should anyone be interested in understanding how that actually works from a neuroscience perspective, I'll be more than happy to explain it, because I can assure everyone it does work, and I can prove it works. The third one, my third wish for Christmas is knowledge. Embrace inconsistent and struggling salespeople, as well as your star performers. Don't just celebrate your star performers. It's the wrong thing to do, because your inconsistent performers, which are about 70% of your salespeople, if you just put a 5% improvement on that, you're going to have a disproportionate improvement on your bottom line, like 20% or whatever it is. Yeah. Your consistently non-performers, if you embrace them, and you turn this PIP, this performance improvement plan, around, so you really make it a performance improvement plan, you will be able to get people out quicker, and it will be the right thing for them, or you will be able to develop them and repurpose them or keep them in there. You've got to actually serve them better. And the PIP and the performance improvement plan, and this is HR leaders, please listen to this, it is really important, and we can help you reinvent your PIP. The other point is your star performers. Yes, they are star performers. Embrace them as star performers. Don't just think of them as quota delivery. Think of them as your ambassadors. When you're introducing new tools, like, for example, the Nazca platform, get them to be your ambassador and drive that forward. So there is a way of actually embracing this, and think about your sales team split up accordingly. If you do that, again, we help with all of that, but if you do that, you will transform your whole business. Those, Malcolm, are my 3 wishes.
Well, I really do hope that they come true. Treve Wearne, something's really fascinated me about our conversation today. We've been from 3,000 years ago with Plato right to modern technology. There's so much in between. We'll have to get together again and talk about this. Treve Wearne, Nazca Services, thank you very much indeed for a fascinating interview.
Thank you. Thank you.